are so many factors. The hammer and nail analogy, we all hear it all the time, that just because you have a hammer, that's a problem, right? That whenever we learn a skill, we want to showcase it. That I know this. For example, I learn a design pattern and now I'm coding. Now I have two options. One is that at everything really fully, you could be replacing a part of your work. You need to think this and then think about learning automation. That's the first part. That where does automation fit into? It's an unfair comparison. Selenium is a library, Playwright is a framework. So using the library, you can construct a framework which would be brittle in its own way. Playwright is going to be brittle. Because the what is the meaning of framework? You see, the meaning of framework is how we do things, whether we are led by hype or fear or a sense of superiority. If we take that away from all the questions, these questions are not different, right? It might look like that this is a testing question, this is a test automation question, this is an AI question. To me, all the questions go back to the fundamental thing. And you don't know test design, and let's say now you learn test automation, irrespective of which tool, it would result in poor test automation. If
Yes.
the original reference, one of the first principles we are taught is we are dealing with an infinity. And then a slice of that, what we end up doing, and now you're calculating percentages of that. Like this is all useless affair. I think these metrics and numbers, it's the confirmation bias as you talk. This is not a subject to be discussed in performance engineering or security engineering. As a functional tester, as a black box tester, you should have known all of this all along.
Namaste and welcome to the Test Chat YouTube channel. You're watching TesterSpeak and I'm your host Brijesh Dev. I'm so excited to be back after a long gap. This is the first episode of our new season, season 4, and I have a very special guest today, Rahul Verma. Now, this happens to be the most requested episode, and this is also the 75th episode of Tester Speak. So, who better than Rahul sir to be my guest today? Now, I very fondly call him sir, so you will see a lot of that during this conversation. Now, to introduce my guest very briefly, my guest today is a phenomenal tester. He is a philosopher, a poet, a writer, a keynote speaker, a teacher, and he wears many other hats. So, without any further delay, let me welcome my guest. Namaste, sir. How are you?
Namaste, bhai. How are you doing? I'm doing pretty well. So,
Welcome to the show, Sarji.
yeah, first of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's long pending. Wanted to have this conversation. And while introducing, I think one thing was left out because beyond all those labels, I'm very much a student of testing and recently a student of intelligence in general, whether it's human or artificial or whatever adjectives we plan that way. So,
Well, no, that's going to be a piece of our conversation today, definitely.
okay.
Intelligence, well, because the world is talking about it. So why should we be left behind? Is what I think.
Yeah.
So, so Saji, without any further delay, let's get in. Let's dive in. How did you begin your journey with testing?
I, I don't know. Maybe my journey is representative of most testers out there. I never wanted to be a tester. Never. I never wanted to even enter into IT industry. So by my degree, I'm a mechanical engineer, and my first job was on the shop floor of a foundry. And I had no real intention of entering the computer industry at all. So because of some unfortunate events, there were lockdowns, and it was a national news. I was working for DCM Engineering, so that's when I started looking out. And even then, it was I was aimless. I wasn't this focused at that time. So I tried all the jobs I could get. Uh, so it didn't matter which one. And I happened to land into testing that way. Uh, my first job was with Satyam, And me being a mechanical engineer, I think that played a big factor that they put me into software testing. And I didn't really like it at all. My peers, everybody around me, everybody said that, now your career is messed up now that you're a software tester. And that's the beginning of my journey, that a person without any programming knowledge, any software knowledge, and any love for the profession he's entering into, that's the beginning of my software testing journey. Yeah.
So you said something really interesting, that you were put in a in testing, and then you didn't choose it, but
No,
then eventually over the years you've learned so much. So it'd be nice to share that piece as to how you learned, how you grew yourself in testing, because I'm sure a lot of testers will be able to relate to it.
yeah,
Now, what we are seeing currently, and this has been the trend at least in the 25 years that I have been in the industry, I've seen similar trends where people are not given a choice and they are just put in testing. When they go through campus selections, or when they join any IT company, a lot of people are given testing projects and say, okay, no, this is what you've got to do. So how does someone scale themselves up, and fall in love with testing like you've done? You mentioned that you've been a student of testing, so you are a student of testing.
yeah.
So
Well,
please take us through your
yes.
journey.
So I think there were a lot of it. Wasn't really me playing any great role in that. It was just the circumstances, and I'm fortunate that the first two three projects which came my way, they were very decent projects, which made me realize that there is no problem in the profession. It made me realize that it's a very deep thinker's profession. It's not just any other job, and whatever limitations are there, it's not with the profession or the work which I'm doing. All limitations are within me, and me not being able to do full justice to it. So there was this project which changed everything. It didn't take actually many years. All the changes, from hating almost whatever I was doing to loving it, it just took maybe around 1.5 years, not more than that. So my first project was around database migration testing, and uh, it tested all my capabilities. And there were four of us, in fact, in that group who started like that, and most of them, they were from computer engineering or instrumentation background. So we worked together, and it was a complex project. Let's put it that way. It was a mainframes project where it was about shifting data from DB to from sorry IMSDB to DB2. So from a hierarchical system to a relational system, and the logic wasn't really present, that it was being done in parallel. So we had to go through all these UML diagrams and requirements to figure out how data would be transported. So it was 7 8 months of a rich work, like one of the best months in my overall career. And then there came a point where the development team asked, there were some openings that they wanted to hire two developers. And they said, we don't want two developers. Just give us one of these four. And all of us actually refused, all four of us. We had started that no, saying, you see, it's easy to love something when you haven't got the opportunity, right? That I love testing, but nobody offered development to me. So it's easy to express love that way. The actual love is when you realize that I can be whatever I want to be right now, but now I choose to be a tester. And that self discovery took 1.5 years. And that no actually changed all the game for me. I could have been a developer at that point, but I said no. It was my choice. And I think that's what changed everything after that. Yeah.
Well, I think that's very interesting, and I think there is a lot to learn for the younger generation of testers who
Jay,
get into the profession, without knowing what's there for them.
Jay.
And if they sort of start to like what they are doing, and then build on that, I think there are a lot of possibilities. Now, I want to ask you this based on one of the recent talks that you gave, where you spoke about the difference between possibility and feasibility. Now,
जी,
that was a very interesting distinction to make. Now, I have noticed in my career that, in testing, we have enormous possibilities.
of course.
But when it comes to feasibility, we somehow fall short in terms of assessing the feasibility.
जी,
So, what's your thought on that? I mean, how should we move our careers, or take steps? What steps
जी,
should we take in our careers to
जी,
understand this distinct difference and to act upon the opportunities that we get as a part of this
जी,
understanding?
जी. So Brijesh, whatever I said there, it's nothing really new. Maybe it's the repackaging of whatever many people out there say, like yourself or anybody. We talk all these things. So I just maybe packaged it a little different, but it's all that it has all been heard a lot of times that whenever you decide to solve a problem, just because you have a skill to solve it in a certain way doesn't mean that skill has to be used, right? There are so many factors. We the hammer and nail analogy, we all hear it all the time, that just because you have a hammer, every problem is not a hammer problem, or a or a screwdriver problem. You choose the tool. So we hear it all the time. And then there are many iron triangles which are taught to us: cost, time, quality. That determines what is your path. Then there's another triangle which teaches us people, process, technology. So what kind of people we have, what is their skill set, what is their ambition in general, um, and what kind of technology we have access to, and what are our processes. So these are again some factors. Then there is the factor of context. There's a factor of risk. There's the factor of business. So there are so many things out there and so many variables to consider that it would always be about feasibility. We can ignore it, but that doesn't make it a possibility problem. And that's a problem, right? That whenever we learn a skill, we want to showcase it. That I know this. For example, I learn a design pattern and now I'm coding. Now I have two options. One is that at every opportunity I try to showcase, you see, I know this magic, I know this design pattern. And that's what most people end up doing. They just want to show that they know. But what we forget is that, uh, for example, of creator of Python, Guido, so he says that code is read more often than being written. So you're not solving the problem for yourself at the moment. It is your legacy which you leave for future, and other people are going to look at it. And I think that's a general lesson to learn, that whatever solution we build today, it's not for that moment really. If it is for that moment, don't care too much. We don't need to think really too much. If you know that by the end of the day the solution is gone, it's a use and throw solution I'm building, don't think too much. Don't over engineer as well. But in case it is going to stay for a few days, weeks, months, and years, then every work we do is a legacy. Whether it's a test case document, whether it's a test script, whether we talk of AI, automation, whatever we take, the question is, what is the legacy we are leaving the team with? And that this simple thinking, actually, this is all common sense, and it would clarify a lot of things. No big thoughts there, really. Yeah.
No, I think that's a very interesting and a very important observation from your side, and also lot of wisdom around it. Now, I can see the same thing being applied in the field of automation. Now, when we talk of automation,
Yeah.
it's almost every time that we encounter this hammer and nail saying that somebody who knows one tool seems to solve the problem with that tool. Whether
Yeah.
you can solve it or not, I mean, with that, it comes secondary. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of focus on problem solving, of course, with automation, but
Yeah.
then the way we think around that problem of solving the problem of that problem is completely different, right?
Yeah.
So, what is your suggestion to testers who are coming new to automation, in terms of learning and how to get into it? I mean, I'm specifically asking this because a lot of times questions come from testers. Oh, I've been doing manual testing for so many years. I want to get
Yeah,
into automation. What should
yeah,
I do? And even if
yeah,
I learn a tool, say for example, Selenium, which is the most common one,
yeah,
what is my career path? That is a question that a lot of testers ask.
yeah.
So how would you address that?
See, there are various situations in which a tester is going to explore automation. First thought is, first of all, figure out where do you stand, what your ambition really is. Sometimes you learn automation because it's for yourself. You want to do better testing, so you explore automation. And sometimes that's the job you got. And when we do automation for the job which we have, we end up exploring a very small aspect of what the possibility of automation could be. So you also mentioned manual testing, and I know your stance on the word that there's, you have this hashtag also. There's nothing on manual testing, and I agree with that. I agree with that. Testing is just testing, and as I mentioned the word intelligence earlier, which form of intelligence, which combination of tooling or thought or intervention we end up using to solve the testing problem, there is no hard and fast rule to govern that. There is no school of thought around that. There are no maxims to follow, really. The answers would never lie on any maxim. So, the first thought I would suggest is that you're not replacing anything with anything really fully. You could be replacing a part of your work, a part of the activity in a coded expression when you do automation. The second part is you could be amplifying it. There are things which don't lend themselves well to, let's say, a human working on that versus, let's say, coded expression or automation working on that. So it again goes back to the possibility versus feasibility question, that are we making the right choices? Or let's say I like humans, I like people. So am I taking a biased decision that I'm going to convert every problem into a human problem? Or am I able to extract what is automatable? And on the other hand, things which humans cannot do at scale, for example, can I scale it using automation? So these are like fundamental questions, and you need to think this and then think about learning automation. That's the first part. That where does automation fit into, first of all, your work as a tester beyond the organization, and then the organization, and then the project context, etc. The second thing is that if you're not a tester per se, that you don't know test design at all, you haven't explored that, and just because you know coding, you jump into, let's say, test automation, which is a small part of automation and testing, it is going to not really serve you to the best extent possible, because test design is the core skill of a tester. Whatever you do, whether you're a performance engineer, security engineer, you are engaged in automation and testing, test automation, whatever you want to do as a tester, in the absence of a proper test design skill and testing style of thinking, uh, nothing is going to serve us to the best extent. So the question is not Selenium versus Playwright or Cypress. I'll give you an example. People compare Selenium with Playwright all the time. It's like every other post there is a survey done, and etc. And to me, it's a foundations problem. It's a basics problem. For example, in this case, it's an unfair comparison. Selenium is a library. Playwright is a framework. So, using the library, you can construct a framework which would be brittle in its own way. Playwright is going to be brittle because the what is the meaning of framework? You see, the meaning of framework is how we do things. It dictates this is how you're going to solve the problem. But a library doesn't. The library provides you building blocks. So it means if you were to construct a framework in your thought that this is how things are to be done, you can do better that with Selenium than with Playwright. If you go deep into framework design, you would quickly realize this. So this comparison is unfair, even with Cypress.
Yeah.
And to me, it is a basics problem when people keep even you would see comparisons between Selenium and TestNG, for God's sake.
Yeah. Yes.
There are two different libraries. One is a test automation engine, and the second is a browser interaction automation library. So you see, to me, if anybody has to explore anything, not just specific to automation, really, go back to basics, learn the foundations, and most of the mistakes we make are based on that. Actually, not whether we are using a complex tool or a big tool, etc. So going back to basics, finding out where does automation fit into the picture, and not to choose a tool just because it's famous. Look at the problem, then pick the tool. Again, cost, Sahi versus Selenium is a better question, for example, or Sahi versus Playwright. Do you use a commercial tool or a free slash open source tool? These are all choices. There is no, one size fits all kind of thing here at all. It's basic thinking, I think, at every stage. Yeah.
Well, I think that is a very detailed and a very nice explanation. I think a lot of testers need to hear what you just said. And I personally feel that there is a lot of bias that
Ji,
we have got over the years, which has made us to believe in these comparisons and
ji,
propagated these sort of conversations even more. So how do you uh, deal with these cognitive biases that we have? And especially when it comes to automation, there is a lot of bias towards certain tools or towards certain frameworks, and people say, oh no, use this and this is going to solve your problem.
ji,
Now, one pattern that I have noticed is that if something works well for, say, one project or one company,
ji.
and they publish it, then people start looking at that as their solution as well, without
Yeah,
understanding the fact that things may be very different in their context.
yeah,
Now, this lack of understanding or lack of clarity of the context leads to a lot of problem, and there is a lot of confirmation bias there. And that is the
exactly.
reason why I bring up this question.
Ji.
So what's your take on that? The cognitive biases with respect to testing, especially with automation?
See, to me, all the answers, Brijesh, is whether we are led by hype or fear or a sense of superiority. If we take that away from all the questions, these questions are not different, right? It might look like that this is a testing question, this is a test automation question, this is an AI question. To me, all the questions go back to the fundamental thinking. And one pattern which I have seen is that, let's say you as a tester, and when as a human you are doing test automation or testing, sorry, and you don't know test design, and let's say now you learn test automation, irrespective of which tool, it would result in poor test automation if
Yes.
the original reference is poor. So if, let's say, I'm working in Selenium today, I don't know framework design, and I'm still stuck with weighting mechanisms not being explicit but dependent on the tool. If my choices are still thread.sleep, for example, in Selenium, these problems would reflect in some other way in Playwright, because I would end up doing poor automation in Playwright as well. So the idea is, whatever we do today, if we are what in whatever manner we do in our existing work, if there are gaps left there, those gaps would multiply as we keep adding more and more complexity to our work. And automation is a complex affair. So you're adding another variable. It's not plain conversion, it's amplification. There is a conversion piece, there's a fitment piece. So we are adding a lot of complexity when we bring automation, not just a solution, but a lot of complexity as well. And if we don't know testing properly, if there are gaps in our work, you are only multiplying them by bringing in a tool. And with the tool hopping, you're further complicating. So I've seen this, like ROI on GUI test automation, for example. I don't know, beyond the lies and marketing and branding and whatever on the LinkedIn or elsewhere, how many people have really seen return on investment for any GUI test automation. I think they're all lies, because it's like we have 100% test automation. Okay, so if you have 50 test cases automated or written down, like 100% of what?
Correct.
Because one of the first principles we are taught is we are dealing with an infinity, and then a slice of that what we end up doing, and now you're calculating percentages of that. Like, this is all useless affair. I think these metrics and numbers, you it's the confirmation bias, as you talked, right? You just want to prove that it's working, but those proofs actually don't exist. And most of the automation success stories are sold that way. One of the project I saw, it had 80,000 test cases. On the other
Oh, wow.
extreme, yeah. So it's not now less; it's actually more. So the first thing which they should be solving is not automation. They should first be figuring out what are these 80,000 tests doing. When all do we? Maybe they are important, but when do we deal with them? At what layer? There should be a risk-based analysis, and then you, when you spend on automation, it's not you blindly start anywhere. You would want to cover your risks, right? And where an automation can handle that risk better. So again, it goes back to basics. Over and over, whichever subject I pick up, I did a recent performance engineering workshop, and I ended up teaching about, for example, how does a browser work? That it has a parser component, it has a network component, it has a renderer component, and here is the HTTP protocol, and here's how it works, etc. And what I told them is, this has nothing to do with performance engineering. This is not a subject to be discussed in performance engineering or security engineering. As a functional tester, as a black box tester, you should have known all of this all along. So that now that when we discuss performance engineering, we focus only on performance engineering. But these are like self created walls, I think, everywhere. That automation, for example, means Selenium. It doesn't. It's a very small part. There are automation opportunities everywhere. We could do report automation, we could do data extraction automation, data formatting automation, and these tools won't help. So you'll need to learn programming properly. But testers, one of the points I missed earlier is testers end up learning programming as a side effect of a tool, which is, I don't know, it is against common sense. You would want to start with generic knowledge to specific knowledge, not the other way around. So
Yes.
you first learn programming, you first learn design, you first learn software engineering, then you learn automation. And I think that's the fundamental problem. All our courses or all the books, they are also discussions, also the programming questions which testers ask in on the platforms are also, how do I solve with Selenium? How
Yeah.
do I solve this with Playwright? Although those could, if you look deeply, they are normal programming questions. And I think again, basics, fundamentals, foundations. That's what is missed everywhere. Yeah.
Well, another thing that I have noticed is that a lot of testers they start learning about automation or any particular tool. I mean,
Ji.
before they get into understanding automation and its capabilities, they do a market research. They look at the job descriptions and say, "Oh, you know what? Selenium is the most popular tool. Let me learn Selenium."
Ji.
Now, again, when they are learning, they learn it from a perspective of clearing the interview, not from the perspective of actually applying it on the job and
Ji.
solving problems there.
Ji.
So when you look at the larger, landscape or the where you are actually trying to solve problems, you will start thinking beyond a particular tool.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, what do you think should be the approach of testers when they are beginning to learn automation? Should they learn from the perspective of just doing interviews, or should it be more than that? Because I'll be very honest, I am actually baffled by the amount of coding round interviews that happen
Yeah.
around testing these days.
Yeah.
You have these lead code and hacker rank and all of this, and there is a lot of dependency I've seen on these tests. And in some companies, there are at least 3 rounds of coding interview before
Yeah.
somebody asks the first testing question.
Yeah.
There is no question around testability. There is no
Yeah.
question around test design, like you mentioned. I mean, it's if you don't know the basics, if you don't know what test design is, then no
Yeah.
amount of coding will actually be able to help you, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? And I would like you to address this from two perspectives. One is from an employee perspective, or from a job seeker perspective, and the
Yeah.
second one is from a company perspective as to how do they need to tackle this.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me from the organization perspective. This is created by the organizations rather than the testing community. Yeah. The mess which exists in the industry, which forces people to not to be able to take the learning path and focus on testing. I think a large part of this is organization driven. In Hindi, we say bhed chal, that organizations just see other organizations, oh, their job description is like that. They follow hacker rank, we would also follow hacker rank. And it's not solving their problem. It's not solving their problem. See, organization has a business context. Testing has a business role. We are there to solve a certain problem. So, in case it has this, we can discuss all day how testers should behave, testers should apply like this, but then there's a practicality out there, right? We need to make money, we need to afford, we need to take care of our families. And I think that's between these choices, when a person gets stuck, the end result is always a compromise, right? So organizations, they need to first of all understand, especially if it is, let's say, a medium style organization, that all their testing needs are not same. So I am first of all not in favor of one style of hiring across the organization, because all the testing problems are not same. So organizations need to first of all segregate how many types of tester roles do they have. And I'm not against coding. I'm not against hacker rank. I'm not against any kind of tech dominant interviews at all. If the need is that, if let's say there's a research project in which the tester is expected to use a lot of coding, software engineering, design patterns, or let's say optimized coding, etc., it matters, then of course that job requirement should have that. Even if network protocols, binary packing, whatever, it can go to any complexity. Let's say there's an AI team and they want to hire a tester today, and they're not dealing with, let's say, Gen AI, or they're dealing with backend algorithms, data choices and tuning and other stuff. Of course, that testing role is going to be complex, and the need is going to be much more complex than what we are discussing here. And I'm okay with that. But in the same team, they might have a web interface to the technology which they're building. And now, if they put the same requirements for both the testers, first of all, they are delaying their own hiring process. And the people who are, let's say, very good at AI algorithms may not be good testers. So it is signing up for failure from organization perspective also. And part two is that uh, now this might, you know, uh, I don't know, people would not like the statement, but I also believe that money is also a factor there. If there is a role which involves deep technical skills or deeper things, you might offer better money there, but not for all testing roles. So from it is in the interest of the organization also, from business angle, by the way, that they can differentiate between tester salaries. I know people are not going to like it, but it's a fact, because this is the problem organization has to sort out. They don't need to give same amount of money to all testers, and for that matter developers, for that matter managers, or even CX roles also. The money should be a function of what is the skill level involved.
Yes.
It's simple. I'm not talking of years of experience here, because that's BS. Okay. It should be a function of skill. If it is a complex role, and I'm not saying manual testing is less complex. So I'm putting these disclaimers because I'm often misquoted. So I want to be clear about that, that I'm not distinguishing that, oh, I talked about research, so I'm saying testers should be paid less. No. What I'm saying is that the money should be a function of the complexity of the skill set. And this everybody knows, that all testing is not equal. If there's a person sitting out there whose task is to just open 100 homepage URLs in the browser, and at the end of the day, it is expected that pass or fail, did it load or not? This is not the same complexity as a tester working in deep research. It's very simple. So there cannot be an organizational level same salary for a role at all. So it is in the benefit of organizations to have 5, 6, 10 types of skill levels defined. And the interview process should be as per that. There is no point in asking coding question from me if coding is not a part of my work after that. It's not a fashion statement. Fashion statement should be different from job description. We hire only these kind of testers. Why? What benefit is it making you? You end up paying more money to everybody out there. Don't. And that could also build a platform for youngsters, because today it's becoming increasingly difficult for youngsters to get testing roles in good organizations because of all this nonsense. You should hire young talent. Don't expect too many skills. Look for smartness and look for specific skills, and then build them as a part of your organization. It would be a big cost saving measure also. From the perspective of job seekers, now again there's one thing, right, that uh, whatever I'm going to say is sort of treated as a lecture. And there's a certain path which I have taken, which I never suggest to others at all, which is that money comes later. You look at what you want to do, and if there are risks involved, take that risk. What you need to understand is that uh, organizations are not in business to do a favor to you, to offer you roles which you desire, to offer you money which you desire. They exist to solve a business problem. And the primary question is that maybe you're able to crack a job, but eventual question slowly which you'll need to face is, and especially when recessions hit, when the things go wild, these questions become more pertinent during that times. And we are going through a phase like that. That what's the value do you bring to the table? The money which you make should be a function of that. I hear these stories all around that this person is paid this much for this kind of work, for this simple work. Now, that person should be worried about that. Maybe that person doesn't worry that in 2 3 years this person is able to make the money. So you see, the moment we make it a question of money, I am nobody to comment on that. There is no suggestion I can make around that. On the other hand, to the people who are in for a longer journey and who treat money as a wave, uh, my only suggestion to you is that this is a game of chess. If you're going to play the game as per the chess which is laid out in front of you by the industry, there is no role for you apart from being a pawn. The chess would keep changing, your role would not be revised, you would continue to be a pawn. It's like in Hindi we say katputli, like a puppet who thinks he or she is in control, but that's not the truth. The industry is always controlling you. So you might make better money, you might be at a good place enjoying the perks, but if you carefully look at your career so far, you are not in charge. Somebody else is controlling it. And when the things go wild, when the things change, they're just going to pull the string. And it's a cluelessness. One thing which I've learned in my career is that we should not let go of the control. We should be in control of our career. And this path is not as fancy. You might end up making a little lesser money as compared to your peers, of course, but this is a longer term game. So if you're thinking of career in testing for 40 years, 50 years, to the youngsters out there, and yes, testing has all those opportunities that you can plan a very rich career of any sort like that. I have already spent 22 years. I'm going to be a tester till I retire, because there is enough in it, and I won't cover everything. It is so deep. So in case you are on the path of knowledge, then take the risks. And it pays off very well in the long run. There would be initial hiccups. First year, you might think not worthy. Second year, you might think it's not worthy. But there's a certain kind of happiness along the way. And this is my first hand experience that, despite remarks from peers and at times the path which I took, when I accepted its challenges and risks, uh, I'm a very happy tester today. I don't want to be anything else in my IT career. That's what I can say. Yeah. So it's not just a lecture or, I say something on stage and I do something back home. This is the advice which I live. So I'm betting on it for my own career as well. Yeah.
No, I think that is a beautiful answer, and I can relate to it because I have also been around for a similar period in testing, and I'm learning. And for me, the best analogy for that is what you call as systematic investment plan back in India.
Jay,
It is like an SIP. The longer you stay in the SIP game, the
Jay,
more money you end up making. So the
Jay,
longer you push yourself in the
Jay,
industry and longer you are able to nurture it, the benefits are going to be bigger in the end. So it
Jay.
depends on how long you're going to play that game and how well you're going to play that game.
There's a piece of
So
poetry usually comes to my mind when we talk these things because this is a concept of servitude,
yeah,
right? So जिसकी जितनी चाकरी उतना उसका दाम पूजा घर में मूर्ति मीरा के घर शाम.
क्या बात.
So it's like we serve the profession, and the better that sense of servitude is, the profession is going to hold our hands. That's what I bank on every time I struggle. That the path is correct. There might be ups and downs, but then I don't think so. There has been real actual struggle in my own career also. There have been people like yourself who have been very kind to me because that's what I bank on. That people need serious testers. So when say my organization is like that, yeah, that's not the last organization in the world. My manager treats me like that. Yeah, that's not the last manager in the world. There would be some space out there, right? It's a big world where we would find slowly a pool of people, and they need to be discovered. And when you find such people who respect your work, who understand the path you've taken, then you don't let go of those people. Then you stick around, and once you've found two, three, four, five such people around you, uh, there's nothing like it professionally. That's what I believe in.
Excellent. I mean, this is so profound and so deep, and I can relate with it so well. My career has also been like that. I mean, so many years in testing, so many times the question came, "Oh, what am I doing in testing?" But then I'm like, "Well, I don't think there is anything wrong." And then I've realized that when people start talking about becoming a scrum master or a product manager because those are more lucrative, they pay better.
Yeah,
So my question is, okay, before you start thinking about those careers, start thinking about testing. I mean, what's wrong with testing? What are you missing here? What is it that testing is not giving you? And how have you, as an individual,
yeah,
dealt with it? Are you just giving up because you're not seeing immediate benefits? Or have you invested in that direction and still you've seen that there is no return on that investment? And again, going back to the SIP analogy, how long have you invested it in? You
yeah,
know, how much time have you spent there?
yeah,
I mean, people talk about stock market and all that. And that's when I start thinking, isn't it similar to our careers? I mean, how much investment are we making?
yeah,
I'll give you a very simple example, sir. That I speak to testers about investing in terms of investing in books, investing in going to conferences, going to meetups, and a lot of them are like, "No, is it available for free?" And I'm like, "Okay, if you are not willing to invest anything, how are you expecting that you will learn something?"
yeah,
Okay, I mean, yes, there is free stuff available. Yes, there are meetups, there are conferences which are free, but how much attention do you pay towards those? Now,
exactly.
again, from a personal example, as a part of the test chat, we've sponsored a lot of testers going into conferences. But at the same time, we've hosted a lot of events which have been free. Now, in response, what we get is, okay, is there a recording available? So
Yeah,
even if it is free, people don't have the time to come and attend it live. They want a recording. So my question to them is, okay, how many times have you gone back and seen that recording? Probably
yeah,
you haven't. So where is the investment in learning? You're not willing to invest money. You're not
yeah,
willing to invest time. And then still you expect that, okay, you will learn a lot. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's something that I personally feel, and I'm saying it out loud. I know that this is going to be on YouTube, and people are going to watch it, and probably,
You all mean well, Brijesh. So I think these things have to be said out loud rather than sugarcoating it or being politically
yeah,
correct all the time. Because from my experience, in addition to what you said, um, if there's a free book out there and I get access to it, versus if I pay for a book, in my experience, I end up reading the book which I pay for,
yeah,
because there's investment gone into it, and I want to justify that expenditure to myself, so I would read it. So my suggestion is, if you're serious about something, let's say there's a book out there, buy it. Don't
yeah,
get it. Don't get it. You're not serious, yeah, you get books through any other means you want. But if you know this is the book uh, which I would definitely read, and this is going to help me, pay for it and read it. The reading would happen automatically, by the way, when you pay for a book. uh, and that goes back to the value of money, right? It's not about how much money we are making. When uh, when we take a path of knowledge, you would value money much more. And it circles back to that, when you now invest that money counts for you. It means a lot to you because you have earned it the hard way. And that value which you put on every rupee you spend, or every unit which you spend, that is going to help you, rather than just lying around because it wasn't really earned with effort. So it's
right,
all, everything feeds into each other. Yeah.
right. Well, now that was a very interesting and a rich conversation. But I want to get into something that is a hot favorite these days: artificial intelligence. let's talk about let's talk about intelligence now. So you have been, you know, amongst the thick of things, if I may say, when it comes to experimenting a lot with generative AI, especially with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So, before I get into a deeper conversation on it, what has been your impression of generative AI thus far? And again, from purely from a tester's perspective, I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think of it? What do you make of it?
So the impression which I have is that, in terms of readiness level, it is at a stage where we can put it to use in certain contexts. Again, the question of possibility versus feasibility. That if one thinks that it can be used in one-click automation of something, uh, is it ready? In my opinion, to that extent, not at all. And I'm not talking just about web-based usage. So to people, ChatGPT is the web interface, and then you talk to the model. But then there is much more behind the scenes which you could do. You could build a custom GPT. You could attach agents to it. You could use API-based access to it, or you could have your own LLMs. You could have multi LLMs architecture, etc. So even in the most complex of architectures, it is not fully reliable tech at the stage. And maybe by nature of technology, it is meant to be that way. So, but the degree of human intervention would possibly reduce over time. But it's not a lab experiment anymore. It is something which you can use professionally and start solving a part of the problems which you're solving right now without the Gen AI technology. So that's my impression.
So we've seen a lot of conversations around this, and I mean, of course, there is still a lot of skepticism around. How should I say, the veracity of or the capabilities of generative AI, and how useful it is for us. But at the same time, we've also seen through various experiments that it is quite useful,
Yeah,
even though it may not be there where we actually want it to be.
yeah,
It is slowly getting there, but then there is this large divide in the testing community as well,
yeah,
where some people believe that it is not something that we can use. Some people believe that we can use whatever is available right now,
yeah.
and we can still achieve a lot, a significant amount.
Yeah.
So again, where do you stand? Are you still skeptical about it, or do you think that the experiments are leading us somewhere?
See, I would always be skeptical, Brijesh. Just like you, just like all the testers around there, that's a part of our profession.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I would always be skeptical. Even 5 years from now, when I use the technology, I would be skeptical because I am also skeptical in dealing with humans. If I assign you a task, I'm not going to blindly consume the output of it. I would be skeptical. That's skepticism is called review,
Yes,
right? So we can like skeptical as a word only in the recent 1 year I've started using it. I never use this word because this is a given. It is not a question to be even, we are spending a lot of time on this on LinkedIn debates these days. I don't think so this is a word to be even discussed, because that's a when we say a tester is a thinker's profession
yes,
and a tester is supposed to ask questions, they saying we should be skeptical is saying the same thing again. It's just a redundant comment after that. Because if you are a thinker, you would seek the truth. It's simple. You're not using, let's say, in this case, LLMs to prove that LLMs work, or not every time going to LLMs to prove they don't work, because this is what is happening in the community today, both these extremes. So, what I've been suggesting is that the question is, do you want to put it to use?
yes,
The way when we hire somebody on the project, we would never get a perfect person. I am not perfect. You are not perfect. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is an expert. Whatever self titled experts exist out there, they're all students, in my opinion. So I don't think so. Experts exist. We are all students. We are not perfect. And when we hold an LLM to that standard as well, that we don't say that it should be perfect, we give it the same leverage which we give to humans. That's when we can now ask how much to use it, where to use it, and then we would understand that in some kind of problems, they lend themselves better. In some kind of problems, we should be very, very, very careful with them, because it is from that zone that testers take examples to prove LLMs don't work. They're right about it. But then there are other zones where they are behaving decently. And we need to take both these cases along and find out how we are going to put them to use. Like as recent as last 2 weeks, I experimented with how to generate a web application using ChatGPT minus Copilot, just with ChatGPT. So I'm not trying this to prove that LLMs can be used to generate code. In the experiments, I'm trying to find out if we decide that I want to generate a web application completely using ChatGPT, which style works. So I went for component based architecture. I tried a path from front end to back end. And the second experiment was from back end to front end. And the third was a feature based, a work, breakdown. And then one feature which cuts across layers. And from each style, I'm trying to figure out what is the learning. And I don't have an answer after 2 weeks also. But in the absence of these open ended experiments, how are we even commenting by taking one basic math question to LLM and asking, oh, it gives a wrong answer? I think there is a bias which is hitting the community, which is not a good thing. It's a technology. Try it out properly. What is missing in the community is deeper experiments. Okay, so my stance is not based on, I have a GenAI course. It's an international course. In that, the same thing is taught, that you are in charge. Never forget that. Okay, never let go of the control, because the LLMs would take you for a ride. So one of the things which I read in a research paper is which I want to share here. So don't quote me that I said that. It comes from some
yeah,
research paper. One of the most beautiful things about LLMs is that LLMs serve those the best who know the answer. Okay. And you would personally experience that if you go to an LLM with a problem you are proficient in, you can use the LLM. It's a very ironical thing that why would you
Yes.
go to LLM when you know the answer? But you see, you're letting go of some parts and let it generate the basic parts. I'm there. But if you don't know the answer and you take that question to LLM, which many of the testers do, they don't know test design and they ask LLM test design question, how do they know how to evaluate the response or critique it?
Yes.
So that's what I mean when I say be in charge. And let's say there's a subject, let's say you don't know how to test a random number generator, you don't know how to test a network protocol. You can still go to an LLM. But minded, you're not solving the problem at that time. So this is the third usage. You're actively engaged, you're building knowledge, you're Googling during the same time, collecting the facts, then you would reach slowly at a stage with ChatGPT's help also or any LLM's help that okay, so far it was exploration. Now let me solve the problem. Now that I have better facts, I've done the homework. So in this mode, you're sort of acting as peers who are exploring the subject, or you are giving a teacher role, but not a trustworthy teacher role to LLM. The way when we Google or we get Guru 99 results as the first thing, you don't trust that website for telling you what is testing. So, subject the LLM to same scrutiny. And I am using LLMs in all these roles in the past 1 year. And what I have said on LinkedIn also, and I would say this out loud here, no single person in my career in the last 1 year has taught me so much as compared to ChatGPT. Whatever said and done, this fact is a fact from my professional life. So, thousand opinions from thousand testers cannot take this away from me. This is a
Yes.
fact. So I'd actually don't care what are the opinions of different people on that. I take their opinion into consideration. I'm careful. If somebody shares an example, I absorb it from the perspective that okay, this is a use case I need to be careful. Not a use case where they say LLMs don't work in general. Like these extremes, I don't believe in. Whether it's automation or a tool or a person or an expert or a book or a talk, to bring back to your original question, am I skeptical? The secret is I'm always skeptical. And even about my own, like when I'm observing, I never trust my own outcomes. Like every 6 months, when I look back at my impression is I should have done better. So, tester. It's once a tester, always a tester. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you on that, and I vouch for a lot of things that you said. In fact, the complete thing that you said, because I've been doing experiments with ChatGPT and
Yeah.
for that matter with other models, whether it is the one from Google, you call it Gemini, or from Anthropic, which is called Cloud AI, or from Perplexity, which is built on top of ChatGPT and other models.
Yeah.
And I am seeing some very interesting patterns emerging. Now, for example, you've noticed that I did a thing for test ideas generation, and what I realized was that I know how to write these test cases. I can write it, and you were absolutely right. Once I know the solution, it's very easy for me to use and to see how good it is in terms of giving me the response. So when I asked the first time when I asked it to generate test cases, or I'm using the word test cases, I don't like to use it, but say for the sake of this discussion, I'll use it. So when I said, okay, give me some test cases, it gave me a random thing. And I was like, no, this needs to be much more refined. And in order to refine it, what is the way? Should I ask it questions? So I said, okay, do one thing. You ask me questions about what I am seeking.
Yep.
And when ChatGPT started asking me questions and I started giving it clarifying answers, then it was able to design better tests
Yep.
compared to or generate better tests compared to what it had given me earlier.
Yep.
So it is this sort of interaction, that helps the LLM build a context, and then based on that context, it is able to give you better response. Comes
Yep.
only through experimentation. And
Yep.
going on the skepticism side, any technology, any methodology, when it comes, I am skeptical.
Of
Okay,
course.
25 years ago, when people started talking about agile and Agile Manifesto, and I was beginning my career. I was like, no, this is not going to work. The word testing was missing in the whole definition. It was development team, and I was like, where is tester? How will it work for us? So it won't work. And today, I am an agile advocate. I speak about using agile everywhere. Okay, so things have changed, things have evolved because I have learned
Yeah,
during the whole course. Similarly, with the whole generative AI wave, I'm learning. Okay,
yeah,
I'm learning better prompt engineering, if you will, to get better results. Now, if it is not giving you the desired results, it is not the LLM that you can blame. It
yeah,
could be that you gave it a poor prompt, and a poor prompt will give you poor response.
yeah.
Yes, you also blame it on the test data, saying, "Oh, the test data is this and this, and it is corrupt and bad and biased and whatever." But then, if you ask some silly questions, you are going to get silly answers. Let's be very.
Th-
Uh,
There's there's another perspective to it, Brajesh, that let's say I give a testing context and I ask, let's say there are, let's say 1 lakh testers sitting in front of me, yeah, and barring only a few testers, hardly anybody is going to seriously talk about performance and security. That's a
yeah.
fact.
Yes.
So the test cases they would quickly give to me is functionality. Now that knowledge within their thinking process might exist, but it's not preferred. They
Yeah.
don't think it's the answers are right inside them, but they are not able to direct their existing testing knowledge towards performance. It needs a nudge that okay, let's forget functionality, let's talk in performance. Can you think like that, etc. Now think about LLM. It is built on the same text, on the
Yes.
same conversations, on the same articles, where the most populist opinion is more and more frequent. And that has got into the weightage for the words and the possibility, probability. And so the most common answers which you'll get are the populist answers. So you can try it anytime. Ask it to give test cases. It would give you 7 test cases, 8 test cases for functionality. Right or wrong is another thing. And then eighth, ninth point would be do some performance testing. Maybe it would say SQL injection, cross-site scripting, because to testers, security means cross-site scripting and SQL injection without
Yeah.
even thinking whether it's a web app or not,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether even HTTP is involved, whether there's a JavaScript engine or not. This is all they know. So that is all the LLM knows. But it
Yes.
knows better. Now you nudge it. You have to extract the answer. So it's a general text engine which has the answer somewhere in the corners because that text was also part of it, the training part, but you have to guide it towards that. So
Correct.
in case the testers are going to LLM, they give me test cases and like there's one example I recently saw on LinkedIn. Okay, the person goes to ask an LLM, give me a reason why exploratory testing is good.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. Yes.
LLM obliged, and then they say, give me a reason why exploratory testing doesn't work. The LLM again obliged. And now
Yeah.
the person concludes this is a problem. You tell me how this is a problem. If the LLM is built in a way to always answer exploratory testing is great, do you realize that it's a bias?
Yeah.
There's a bias built into the engine which we talk against as testers, that bias should not be a part.
Yeah.
So the LLM has to remain neutral. So it means if you ask it answers about two contradicting things, it needs to serve your need. It's like a
Correct.
lawyer that there's a case. So you go to LLM and you say, help me from this side fighting this case, and it would help
Yeah.
you build that case. And now you say, no, on the opposing side. Now help me build the case. So
Yeah.
this is, I don't know what we are doing here. Why we have made up our mind, some of us, that we want to prove LLMs don't work. And every day we cherry pick news items to just keep proving that. But the same people fail to share news where it's very clear that LLMs do work as well. We need both. Okay, I'm not saying that what they're sharing is not good. What I'm saying is sharing only that tells us a lot about their own thought process and what they're going to do. And I would be very careful about that. because our community has been hurt in the past like that, when automation was being discussed, when exploratory testing was being discussed, or people who were overplaying the role of Selenium. Every time it happens that way, that we are led into the zones of hype or into the zones of fear, and it serves the community not in a good way. So I keep repeating this question all the time. How many times should it happen to you before it occurs to you that the answers are not on the maxims? We are not talking of human versus artificial intelligence here. There's a plus sign which is blinking, which is telling you, talk about me. I'm a plus, I'm not a versus symbol. I'm a plus symbol. Please talk about me. But it's so easy to take a stance that I go to stage and I present on what all LLMs can be do. Okay, great talk. And I go to stage and say, this is shit. This is bad. Great
Yeah,
talk, revolutionary. But if I go to stage and I say, both are important. You say it's an okay talk. It doesn't get me the attention. So in the spirit of being popular, people are playing these games, but we need to know that, when we come back to work, it's not about popularity or throwing fancy words and one-liners at the problem. And the people who are providing math questions to LLM, I need to ask them, are you solving a math question in your testing today? Is 2 plus 2 equal to 4 is what you're doing in your work? If not, if you're dealing with test case designing for web interface, please take that damn question to LLM and ask. If you're not here to just prove or disprove things, if you talk about cognitive thinking in the same statement, in the same article, you're talking of biases, then we need to sort of look inside as well. Because, like, I am biased, I have my biases, but I acknowledge them, that there is a bias inside me. So everybody is biased. The thing is that what kind of bias we have, you
yeah.
know what kind of bias? Is it serving the right direction or is it working against us? So saying that you are biased, I am not, I think that's itself a sort of a cognitive bias. Okay. So we need to, the moment we acknowledge this, that nobody knows it all, whether the person has spent 40 years, 50 years in testing, or 2 years, we are all in the same boat. And there is so much, for example, Brajesh, you know about. I haven't even touched that domain, right? So I remember you talked about localization, internationalization. I have never had the opportunity to work in a proper project where that was the testing problem. So, what is the expertise doing here in me? So when I, let's say, tomorrow I have to work with you, I have to sit as a student and listen first and absorb. So these people who are making LLM remarks, they have this worn the cap of LLM experts suddenly by taking 5 questions to prompting. Okay, I'm doing months and months of experimentation. So whatever I'm saying is based on that. And after that, yes, I'm saying please be careful. But it's a tech which can help. It has a lot of potential. And just try it out, but make your experiments deeper. Don't do shallow
Yes.
experiments. Yeah.
Yes, and I completely agree with that response. Now, in the beginning, you mentioned something about performance and security, and I have an observation, and this is based on my experience over the years. That in a lot of organizations, in a lot of companies, testing is an afterthought, and security and performance are an afterthought of an afterthought. Okay, only when the customer faces a problem,
Yeah.
then people start talking about security and performance, and this is what has you know uh, led into our minds or in our lives as testers as well, that we speak so little about them.
Yeah.
Then, and that's why when you ask an LLM, it also speaks less about it, because we have given the LLM the data or the information that we have ourselves. Now, if we
Yeah.
have one sort of thinking, we cannot expect the LLM to think differently, because what it knows based on what we have given it to them. That's one thing. The other
Yeah.
thing about experimentation, I mean, of course, I know for a fact that this technology is helpful. Okay, now to what extent is this helpful? Obviously, time will tell.
Yeah.
And for that, I need to do a lot of experimentation.
Yeah.
And during these experiments that we have been doing, we are discovering a lot of stuff. We are learning a lot. So when you initially, I began the conversation with possibility and feasibility. I always believe that there are endless possibilities. Now, out of those endless possibilities, what is feasible is for us to decide, and we have to be very judicious about those things.
Yeah.
Now, I want to share this. I haven't shared this in public yet. That I think I have run into a huge defect with ChatGPT. Okay,
Okay.
and a defect with ChatGPT, and I want to make it public here. I will. I have reported it to OpenAI. I haven't had a response, but hopefully, sometime I will get. I
Mhm.
was talking to you about the internationalization problem,
Yep.
where I asked it to generate data in different languages,
Yep.
and for it to generate a PDF file for me with that data, or CSV for that matter, and it fails. It
Mhm.
fails because it does not utilize, or it is somehow not able to utilize the UTF-8 Unicode library. It is getting
Okay.
stuck. Okay,
Okay.
it will give me a Python script. It will give me on the screen. I can see everything in the different languages. But when I say, okay, give me a PDF or give me a CSV file with that data,
Yep.
it doesn't. It is not able to generate. Every time I run into an error. So it has
Okay.
tried so many times. Okay, let me try this option, that option. Once it went into six iterations by itself. It said,
Yep.
"Oh, let me try, let me generate." Then it said, "Okay, wait, let me try and generate a zip file containing this." And then
Mm.
it said, "Oh, this is also not working. So maybe I should try something else." And it was trying on itself, and it was nice to see ChatGPT trying by itself without me giving the instruction, "Okay, try again," or "This is not good." It said, "I
Yep.
apologize. I'm not able to generate. There is an error. I'm meeting an error." It kept on repeating that, and I said, "Okay, this may just be a bug that it
Yeah.
is not able to generate that." Okay,
Yep.
or it may be some other problem. We don't know. So that's why I took the case to OpenAI developers and I've raised it to them. I haven't heard back from them. Of course, they are busy with their stuff, so I have to consider that as well. But then
There's a
hopefully someday this will lead to a bigger discussion. Well, having said that, I want to move into my next question, and that is uh, Sir, how do you reconcile the tension between deterministic testing methods and the probabilistic nature of these LLMs or the machine learning models?
yeah. So first of all, I'll come back to the subject of performance and security
Hmm.
versus functional testing. So usually we say, right, think like a tester, and then we say that when you are a performance engineer, think from performance perspective, and then when you're a security engineer, we say think from security perspective. Now, this dialogue in itself doesn't help because
Yes.
I have not seen any public write up by the same people who explain what's really the difference. And the difference is actually in your question. Security engineering is a non deterministic oracle problem.
Yes.
Performance engineering is a non deterministic oracle problem. We might think that we put a threshold of response time, let's say 5 seconds. And if the values are less than this, then it is like this, and then it is like that. You see, that's a functional tester talking of performance engineering.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah.
problem.
Correct.
The real face of performance engineering, for example, the last project which I did, it had 1200 graphs, 1200 graphs of different metrics. And I need to look at those graphs and figure out where the bottleneck is.
Hmm.
So you see, in this problem, there could be multiple stories which 1200 graphs can tell you.
Yes.
In this specific project, the graphs ended up telling me, let's say, DB server had a problem around memory. But the problem which I ended up reporting was that you have a query building issue from the application server.
Yeah.
This graphs would not, it's a non deterministic problem. And you always take the risk that your analysis could be incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similarly, when you are working as a security tester, you send a packet, you might not get anything back. You keep getting the same page back. So, how do you even know your test passed or failed or worked or not? There have been circumstances then that today I conducted the test and I marked that, that there's no problem. And 3 weeks later, I happened to get access to the web server and I was doing some other log auditing activity. And then there's an evidence which I found there which proved that the test which I conducted 3 weeks back actually was a security vulnerability. So you see, this is what I'm used to coming from security and performance field. Non-deterministic oracles is not a new thing at all,
Yes.
and it should be good news to people because the more non-deterministic it is, the more chance that we need human mind, human
Yeah.
intelligence. There are certain pieces using some heuristics and random analysis you can automate certain part, but in such problems, and you would see people that performance engineering is not of it involves a lot of automation, but you need
Yes.
good engineers still, despite all the tools. So performance engineers never come across a question of manual versus automated testing. This
Correct.
silly debate. Only in functional testing we do all this nonsense. Okay, security engineering, there is no confusion that security tester can be replaced with a scanner. We don't have that confusion. Scanner is a tool. Security engineer is the hero
Yeah.
using like 20 tools in a project also. We don't have this confusion that manual security testing versus automated we don't do that. In fact, when the tool runs a test, we call it security assessment, we don't call it security testing. Security testing is only when a person is involved, when a human mind is involved. Only that is called security testing. And the security assessment done by the tool, which actually runs millions of tests, the output of that is fed into this mechanism. So this silly distinction, right? And that's why you would see that I don't care whether somebody calls it manual testing or, I know it is. I understand your point. We had that conversation also that this has become derogatory over time, which is a sad reality. But to me, this question is more about again basics and foundations, and the dignity of profession, and the servitude, and what is my relationship to testing as a subject. Because if we get that right, it doesn't matter what the world calls it. Like if you label me, let's say there's a consulting opportunity and you say this he's a consultant on manual testing, I don't care. I'll not fight the fight that no, you should seek consulting for tester. I don't play that game anymore because I would remain the same. I have to make sure how I am treating this subject. So coming to the deterministic you know, versus probabilistic or heuristic or let's say non-deterministic nature of AI and related things, this is a big challenge before us. People are talking of metamorphic tests. So the oracle problem is deeper now, and it is going to be the primary challenge. And guess what? That's a test design problem again going back to basics. Automation by itself would not solve it. AI or gen AI by itself is not solve it. It's a problem of how we are going to figure this out. So it's a deep test design problem before us, and it is going to be interesting, and we don't have any solution so far. It's only heuristic and comparative studies, and then discretion and judgment. And in the coming years, this is going to be the challenge, and it's growing, Brijesh. Like even in non-AI, how do you know that when you go to LinkedIn, you forget AI for a moment? Okay, so I'm just bringing this to attention of your audience that non-determinism and AI are not equal. That oh, because of AI we have non-determinism. We are
Yeah.
already facing those problems in testing minus AI, but we didn't care about them. Okay. For example, you go to LinkedIn and forget that they have an AI algorithm or something. Just rewind 5 years. Okay. Now ask yourself, how do you know that the first 10 posts on your wall should be the 10 posts? What's your oracle? It's a non deterministic situation, right?
It is.
Any kind of recommendation engine or tagging system or Amazon recommending you which products, these are all non-deterministic situations. So
Correct.
it's not that AI has brought these problems our way, but what I'm saying is AI would bring, everything is going to turn into this, And we as testing community, this is a worthy problem now. This is the problem where the best of our minds, like James Bach, Michael, there's a lot of value in their work, lot of value. And this is the space I would like to actually hear from people like them, that, this problem, how do we sort it out? Because this is a big problem. This is where the mind should get together rather than the verses and verses and verses. It's not a good use of time for the good minds, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, quite an interesting answer, and I agree to all of what you said, and it makes me think about, in which direction am I thinking? Okay, like for example, when I was thinking of this question, I did not think of the non-deterministic nature of security and performance, and you're absolutely right. And now it makes me think that yeah, it is a much it needs a much deeper introspection from my own side or from us testers
Yeah.
to be able to solve this problem. So
Ji.
yeah, thank you so much for actually enlightening me on on this one. Now I want to talk about something which is not related to testing or anything like that. We've over the years seen your love for poetry. I want to
Ji.
go in that direction a little bit and touch upon that. So how did that happen? I mean, I know you do a lot of reading, but how did that love affair with poetry begin?
I think that the origin of that is in poetry. My mom was a Hindi teacher, and when I was 10, 11 years old is when I stepped into stage acting. And 2, 3 years, some of those stage plays were poetic plays, that like complete plays, poetry. One such play, the first play, in fact, was poetry. My mom had interest in poetry, so it was her first play she wanted to direct, and I had a very small role. It was of a madman. huh. So the play is called Janta Pagal Ho Gayi Hai. All the dialogues are in poetry, and she had a knack for Persian style, over the top acting and gestures and something. So it was almost poetry recital, and I think somewhere there the interest was born. And then slowly I developed a taste for ghazals, Urdu poetry, and then I had a teacher for that. And so he's a great poet himself and a musician. So a bit of music and poetry got together. And then during my college, I started learning Urdu so that I can read more poetry, because all of that is not available in transliterated form in Hindi and English. So in parallel to, in fact, my first job at Satyam, I went to Urdu calligraphy class, and I had a formal Urdu teacher. He was also a poet, so he had published 7, 8 poetry books. So I think somewhere, because I could not pursue the path of theater, I had to leave it because of financial difficulties. And somewhere I try that I bring some elements of that in this journey, because I have to make sense of this world. At my In my heart, I'm still that artist. It was a dream lost for me, that I wanted to be a stage actor and I couldn't. And in fact, years later, when I had to leave employment and start my own company, Testmile, I was still stuck in the same situation, that with no financial backup and no, not many links in the organization, I think I should let it go. I should not leave my good paying job and start a company. And it was this thought that when I was a kid, I left a dream because of the same question. And years later, I'm doing actually much better financially. So what is the difference then? If the world has been kind to me, what I am giving it back, and what about my dreams? So it was this thought that I ended up leaving my job at McAfee. I remember it was the peak of my employment there. My photograph was in the reception because I was the fastest growing employee of McAfee. And I left McAfee at that peak, and I started from zero and opened my company. So theater and poetry has this indirect role in keeping me motivated and all this journey, and I think it continues to this day. And somewhere in my talks or story building on stage, that's the part I still carry in a small way with me even today. Yeah.
Well, no, I have heard some of your poetry. You know, some of your recitals, some of your work. I have, of course, been reading through the little snippets that come out in your
Yeah.
posts. Uh, so I'm curious to know over the years who has been your favorite poet and what has really influenced you about from that poet.
See, there's an impact of satire on my poetry at times, especially when I link it to professions. So Ibn Insha and stage plays of Sharad Joshi
Oh yeah,
uh, and Srilal Shukla. So his book Rag Darbari is, I think, the best satire book I've ever read in my life in any language. And from Ghazal perspective, I think Ahmad Faraz, Nida Fazli. So they have had a big impact on my poetry. And in Punjabi poetry, there's a poet called Jagtar, and other there are various people who have influence, and there's a philosophical influence from Khalil Gibran and George Orwell. So there are various. I can't really count influences because what I found is that this world has beautiful authors.
yeah.
Like, you know, it can't happen that you read a book and it can't touch you. It always causes this change in who you are, and so it becomes very difficult to pinpoint really that what part you see anywhere. So that's why you would see that like every now and then I end up writing a post or I keep talking about it, that if you like my work, uh, the possibility is that whatever you like is somebody else's. It's not me. That because I don't know, right, which slight thread of thought led to whatever I say today. Like even in this conversation, I don't think so whatever I'm saying is original at all. Whatever I've said, there are like maybe 100 people somewhere in my life who have eventually led to whatever I've said today. So I owe it to everybody. Yeah.
I absolutely love the honesty and the humility there in that response.
So that's the truth.
Um,
It's not really humility. That's the truth. I think if we are able to recognize that I might said, let's say I don't even remember the paper where I read that you know LLMs serve you best when you know the answer, but I know I've read it somewhere, or I say anything today about how to learn, or the works of even testers. They have this philosophical influence on me, like James Bach, Michael, Vipul, and I keep listing all these names all the time. That there is a big impact, and all of them are my teachers. Yeah.
yes, that has been incredible. Now to some other question. I usually used to do it in a rapid fire format, but then I realized that it doesn't bring out the best responses. So just an open question. I mean, um, so you've now been living in Berlin, and before that, if I'm not wrong, you were in Bangalore.
Yeah.
Uh, so which city do you like more?
I think both the cities.
Diplomatic answer or
Not, not at all. I'll tell you. So Berlin is, of course, more expensive city. It's like 2 3 times, and we end up making almost the same money in Bangalore and Berlin. So from that
yeah,
perspective, Bangalore wins. In terms of food, the second most important thing for me, or maybe the first one, both are good places. Both are great places, and friends I have in both places. I have this close, good circle. So I have friends here, I have friend there. The only thing which I miss, I guess, is that I'm alone here right now. My family is back in Bangalore. We are still in the process of figuring out what to do. So overall, because my family is there, maybe Bangalore wins. Yeah.
well, Bangalore is very close to my heart as well because my father lives there, and so I used to proudly call myself as a Bengali from Bangalore because I've done most of my schooling, my college there in Bangalore before I moved to Mumbai and eventually to Netherlands.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Bangalore has a very special place in my
It's a,
heart.
definitely. People are good, food is good. And in terms of professional opportunities in IT testing, I think
Yes.
it's possibly one of the best places in India to be.
Yeah, and in fact, when I got my first job, it was of course in Bangalore, and that time Bangalore was slowly shaping up to be the IT capital of India, or the
Zero.
Silicon Valley of India, or whatever you want to call it. So
Zero.
it was that moment when everybody capitalized, including me. And like, even though I am also not a computer science IT engineer, I am an electronics engineer by qualification. And all my friends were moving towards IT and computers, and so even I took that direction. So it was more of a bandwagon bias. We all talk about biases. So there was this, okay, everybody moving in that direction. Let me jump on the bandwagon and see where I end up. And today, I think I am in a good place. Yeah. So it has been a good decision. I like what I'm doing today. A lot of testing, a lot of opportunities of criticizing stuff and getting paid for it. So that
That's the
can
best
be,
part.
yeah, that's that's really this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we've been speaking for a long time, but I do have the time for one final question for you, and this is again
Yeah.
back to testing. So you've seen uh, testing evolve over the years. You've seen technology evolve over the years. So what is your advice to testers, whether it is fresh graduates or experienced testers, to keep up with this changing evolution that is happening?
Okay. So I'll give the same advice as I'm giving myself because at any point I'm a consultant. So I'm very much I work as an individual contributor even today. So I would share what I am going to work on for let's say next 4 to 5 years. And because the advice is being given right now, not 5 years back, 2 years back, so maybe it is relevant to all the people out there. So my advice to myself and to you all is take artificial intelligence seriously, please. Very, very seriously. And I am deliberately using the term artificial intelligence because chat gpt, llms, they are a small part of it, very, very small part of it. So in case you get serious about it today, you're possibly looking at 4 to 5 years of journey minimum. And along that, what makes it more challenging is that there is, as always, very less mapping to testing being done. So you can find a lot of AI literature. There's a rich literature out there. And if you're interested in free, yes, most of that is free. The great YouTube channels, great LinkedIn content on that from AI researchers, beyond hype and fear. There's wonderful content, but that is not mapped to how a tester can use it or how a proper testing of such technologies can be done. So it means by being a tester and thinking like a tester, there is a lot of value also we can bring to the table. This is what I have signed up for myself for next 5 years. I'm studying 3 to 4 hours every day, and I'm going to continue this. So this is the same advice I can give to you because as far as experience is concerned, let me be very honest with you. It doesn't matter I have 22 years of experience or whatever, right? Or experiments. As far as AI is concerned, you, me, everybody in testing community, barring a few exceptions, we are starting at the same point of this race. We are
Yes.
right at the beginning. So don't confuse experience with non-experience. You're as experienced as me, which means you know nothing. I know nothing. So I have spent maybe a couple of months in that. So very, very early stage. So this is the advice for everybody, including me, for the next 5 years. Yeah.
No, I think that is a very good point of learning for everybody, because of course AI as such is much bigger than just generative AI. What we are seeing, it is probably the tip of the iceberg. People are already talking about artificial general intelligence, which is
Right.
AGI. and somebody like Elon Musk is saying it's going to come next year. So, so you see, there is like I began the conversation with is
Yeah,
around possibilities. So there are a lot of possibilities.
yeah,
You have to just keep your eyes and ears open,
Ji.
and like you said, I mean, embrace it rather than just treating it like as your enemy or something that's not going to serve you. Embrace it,
Exactly.
learn, get better. So that
It is
is some
going to
wonderful
become so
advice.
powerful. And along the way, what I want to say is that don't think of converting what you're doing to AI. That's the same mistake we did with automation.
Yeah.
Okay, it is here to amplify. The other thing is that once you've converted a part of your work, what are you doing in that time? Face that question. And let's say you haven't explored performance testing so far, explore that. You didn't
Yes.
explore, let's say, programming so far, become a programmer. You didn't explore software engineering, architecture so far, explore that. Or there's a test design technique you didn't learn so far, learn that. So it means I look at this technology as that this is an opportunity to make us better than who we are, first of all. It is not there to take away some parts. It would take away some parts so that we can fill that void with something better. If we take this journey, this technology is here to empower us rather than work against us. And that's how I'm taking it. And that's what my that's again, part of the advice to myself first, rather than giving gyan to others.
No, that is beautiful advice. That is really incredible. And, this was a very enlightening conversation for me. I have a lot of other questions as well, but, we have, limitations in time. So I would like to carry this conversation forward. I will probably get on another call with you,
I will,
and do a part two of this podcast, because I have so many questions now. You've opened up my brain to in so many directions. This has been one of the most wonderful conversations that I've had as a part of my journey as a podcast host. And I'm sure that the community is going to benefit from it. So I want to thank you for giving your time. And, I want to thank you for everything that you have been doing, uh, in the testing space, because every time I read a post from you or have a conversation from you, I learn. And I want to tell other testers that, this is the kind of skill set that you need to build, that we all keep learning from each other, because there is a lot that we all can do. So once
Ji.
again, thank you so much, Saji, for your time today.
You're right. It
And
was a pleasure. बहुत मजा आया. Thank you.
thank you. I will, of course, see you around and have more conversations with you on this subject.
Sure.
So that was a very interesting conversation. That brings us to the end of this episode of TesterSpeak. For more such conversations, do subscribe to the Test Chat YouTube channel. I will see you in another episode of TesterSpeak with another guest. Until then, take care. Namaste.